Okay, we're streaming live. Okay, here we go. Happy to see you tonight, sir. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing really well. It's been a heck of a last couple of days. Been on set, getting stuff prepped for a big filming thing tomorrow. Um, yeah, it was. I was telling you earlier, like, oh, you might have to start the show an hour later because we're not getting out yet. We got delayed, but we ended up pulling it in right under the wire. So I'm happy to be here, and happy to have you as well joining me tonight because this is we got a fun one to talk about, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so I guess without further ado, let's get the show started. As it looks like all audio is coming in loud and clear. Thank you so much for all the voices out there. With that, so without further ado, welcome to Scripts on Saturdays, the only screenplay review show on the interwebs discussing scripts both professional and amateur, circulating around Hollywood, giving you, the TV and movie-going audience, a behind-the-scenes and inside track on what writers are pushing and what producers are buying. I am your host, the Script Doctor, and joining me this week is the Price of Reason. So happy to have you here, sir. Um, yeah,
It's
so
great to be here.
it's
You know how back when Saturday Night Live was actually good, and if somebody hosted many times, they used to do like a big ceremony? I
yep.
feel like that's me on Scripts on Saturdays. I feel like Steve Martin. I'm the Steve Martin of your show.
Yeah, you are because you're definitely part of the Fiverr Club.
Right.
And soon, next season, when that starts, you'll most likely hit the 10, and it just keeps going up and up.
So I really like that. I like being, one of the VIPs. So thanks
No,
for inviting me.
yeah, I like inviting you here because, well, you got a good track record with scripts on your way. With only I think what one bad one out of all of them that you've done.
I think so. I mean, we've had different ones. We've had
Hmm.
different ones, and they were all interesting. I mean, even if I thought they were good or bad, I think that the idea of evaluating them and discussing them is always interesting, especially since these scripts are of interest to Hollywood studios. That's always surprising because you see some of these scripts, some of them you understand why Hollywood is interested, but some of them you don't understand at all.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean that's just the nature of the business, right? It's more often than not, it's a zero sum game, but at the end of the day, if you get that one good one, even if so many other people rejected it, if you're the one guy that said yes or the one gal that said yes and it makes it big, everyone in it town completely closes their yap and says, "Oh yeah, I never heard of that script. That's a great find." Yeah, yeah. All the people that said no to it, all the people that rejected it, just you know, never admit that they missed out on the opportunity. But now we have like that's why I like this show is because we can kind of broadcast a little bit more awareness to some of these scripts out here to make it harder for those that reject a great one versus those that accept a bad one. At least that's how I like to think about it. Maybe we're doing it, maybe we're not. Who knows? Time will only tell. But for this week's script, this is this is our last live show of the month because next week is Thanksgiving Day weekend. So we have a recorded show which will be dropping there, but it'll still be premiering 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. So don't fret on that. And we'll most likely have another recorded show in December because I'm heading out to LA to just do some follow ups in person with some people and some hangouts. So be sure to follow me on the Twitter X's there as well as Price or Reason. Always got some good takes and also your very fun Quantum Leap Revisited show that I am honored to be a participant of. So just want to get that stuff out of the way in case I forget and people were
Oh,
wondering next
no
week what
problem, no
happens.
problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we can tell them at the end. But yeah, it's a great
Mhm.
show, the Quantum Leap one, and it's great having you on there, by the way. But let's let's talk
Let's
about
talk
today's.
about this one.
Let's move on to today's
So
script.
this week's script is titled "The Prophet," and it's a double entendre of sorts. It placed 19th on the blacklist with only 16 votes, so it's a weird number aggregate there. This is the second script that made that year's blacklist by Andrew Ferguson. And Price, would you share with us the log line for the prophet? For the prophet, excuse
Sure,
me.
sure. I'll read the log line. The astonishing true story of how an unknown evangelical, evangelical, Okay, let me do it again.
That's okay. Go
The,
for it.
the astonishing true story of how an unknown evangelical Christian immigrant, Bill Huang, suffered the greatest loss of wealth in American history, gambling away his $35 billion fortune and jeopardizing the entire financial system in under 48 hours.
That's right. The synopsis is Sun Kook Bill Huang, a devout Christian and daring investor, orchestrates a meteoric rise from obscurity to $1 billion fortune, only to watch it evaporate in a spectacular financial implosion. As FBI agent Ty Woods unravels Huang's high-stakes schemes, the lines between faith and ambition blur. How does a man who claims divine guidance reconcile with the catastrophic fallout of his own creation? So this, I think, is kind of, it's a rarity with us on the show, because this is not just only a biopic, but it's of a very, very recent event that has happened in our lives. Like, this is regarding the Viacom CBS stock, their stock crash, as well as the significant decline from Discovery and a few other stock holdings. That this script kind of tells a story how this Bill Huang inflated those stocks, thinking that they were going to yield a great return, and didn't take into account that, well, when Viacom saw this boost and assumed that they were well liked as a company, and this is 2019 and 2020, they decided to sell a little bit of that stock so they could refinance their streaming platform. And when they started to sell, everybody else started to sell. and this is history, guys. You can go look this up. So this script kind of covers the beginnings of this venture from Bill, technically through a flashback, but Ferguson kind of does this in a much better state, and he's able to get away with this because of the fact that it is based on a real story, and that is, we kind of open the script with Bill in an interrogation room with the FBI. And he's
Right.
listening to the charges brought against him of racketeering and insider trading, etc. And he's waiting for his lawyer, which isn't an actual lawyer. It's just the Bible. Like, it's brought into him.
Yes.
And then we flash back to when this all started at his private hedge fund. And I wanted to get some of your thoughts just on the plot and the character of Bill as depicted in the script price. What were your initial thoughts with him?
Well, I think that the thing starts off, and they want you to understand that he sort of has two sides to him. He has this kind of Christian. He's with his church, or he's like a pastor, and he presents himself as this kind of very spiritual community leader. But then it kind of switches when he goes into his more trading mode, and then he becomes very ruthless. So he has these kind of two sides to his personality. And the more what I liked about this screenplay, and I think that it did it rather decently, is that the more you move forward and the more you see him in certain situations, whether it's how he works with his employees, whether how he hires that female employee that
Molly.
he
Yeah.
interviewed, Molly, all that stuff, you gradually learn that all that Christianity stuff really seems like a facade. It seems more and more like the reason he did this whole seemingly Christian thing almost seems a bit of a scheme, even though he seems to believe it. But I don't know. You learn that there's a lot of layers to the guy, and I think that the screenplay does it pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
There are things, though, that I still, and the truth is, this is the true story, so I don't know if this movie could answer that question or not. But throughout the movie, it seems like when this guy is doing all this kind of shady stuff, his wife is really, really pushing him to do it. She seems really adamant about him continuing, and even at points where maybe he could back off and just take a win and maybe get out of it somehow, she continues to really push him to. And supposedly the explanation is that God wants him to do it. That's because of their faith. He has to keep being greedy. That's the part that's a little weird for me. But at the same time, I mean, it is based on a true story, so I don't really know what to say. I just wonder if in reality the wife really pushed that aggressively, or if he was just a greedy guy and that was it.
I think it's probably a little bit of both. I mean, I actually was reading a little bit on the history of this guy after I read the script earlier this week. And I will say this. The way that I think the writer, Andrew Ferguson, frames his wife in this case is basically she's the Lady Macbeth, right? Like, Macbeth has his own desires and schemes, and then, his wife just kind of pushes him a little bit further than he needs to go.
I
And
see.
as a result, that kind of leads to his own downfall. And it's also playing on his own arrogance. And I think, to your point, it's really hard to gauge whether he is genuine about his faith or not, and more so, and less. It feels more like the way that he structures his company. We can talk a little bit about that. In the script, he doesn't call his employees employees; he calls them followers, and
Right.
it goes so far as to, like, he headhunts this lady named Molly Goldman, who is this
Right.
really very brilliant analyst. So much so that she's kind of being ignored at her current employer, and the only reason she's entertaining this job interview because she has been propositioned by Huang's company for at least 6 months or so. Is she figures if she does the interview and gets it out of the way, she'll either figure out whether this is a company worth joining, or she can go back to her job and hit the grind to maybe get some more responsibility and attention, because that is her motivation. It's not so much money. She's fine for money, and she does have some responsibilities that she wants to pay off, but what she really wants is she wants to have a little bit more agency and responsibility in the industry of being a trader, a financial trader. And what we learn in this scene, and I think it's a pretty decent, I mean, it's a very Aaron Sorkin type of back and forth scene, where Bill knows everything about Molly, because he's done some research on her, generated like 2 different files on her portfolio, her background, everything he would need to figure out if she would be a useful follower in his quote unquote church, so to speak. And it impresses her enough that she agrees to the job, where she literally starts the moment the interview ends. Like, she's handed her a contract. She's told, like, yep, these are the stipulations. This is how much you make a year. This is your catalog and your booking that you're going to be overseeing for the next, for your time here. Also, if you get some profits, we expect that you donate it to what's called The Plan, which is the charity that Huang runs, which, even though he talks to this one eager guy named Richie about how he separates the charity from his business, they're literally on the same floor across from each other. So he's a hypocrite.
Right, and he's doing shady things with the money. But I will ask this. I understand that for dramatic purposes they did the Macbeth thing, like you've said.
Yeah.
And I can appreciate it. They have to sell a story and make it interesting, even if it's a real life story. And I'm sure they took some creative liberty. I wonder, though, if really in reality the wife was there, like, egging him on all the time, and how seriously they would sit around and really pray when they're just her and him together. I tend to think, based on how they explain his history, his troubled history as a trader, and the kind of messes that he got in the past, it seems like this whole church thing seems really like a front so he could continue his business, but do it in a way that sort of makes it seem legit. And it seems like he thought that. It doesn't. And other characters make reference to this at a later point, especially at a later point in the screenplay. Meaning, they try to present it as though maybe he's serious about this Christianity thing, but I'm not sure in reality how serious he really was. I think he was serious about his front, and I think that part of his greed was probably him. I don't know if it was in reality just his wife telling him, you got to be more greedy, or whatever it is.
No, I'm kind of leaning into on the same aspect of that, because I think he's using the object of faith as a veneer to justify his actions, and also
Yes.
as a hook to basically say, well, I'm so devout to my faith that you have to trust me because I'm trusting in God.
Right.
And then it gets to that delusional state where he believes God is speaking to him. So much so that even there's mockery among his employees where he's like, well, listen, if God called you on this, can I have his number? Because I have some questions. And Bill does not take that lightly. And it goes down to like the obsessive nature, right? Where maybe this front has actually morphed itself into something that he has convinced is true, and gets lost in the weeds of it, because there's all these signs that are pointing to how his investment choices and what he's doing is going to have such a terrible backfire on him, but he still ignores it because he's looked so closely into the light that it is like burned out his cornea, and he's not seeing the forest for the trees anymore.
It's possible. I did think that there was one funny thing that sort of, I think insiders like us would know that a regular person reading the screenplay or even watching the movie wouldn't think. But the second that he was choosing which stocks he was going to buy that and leverage and do all that shady dealing,
Yep.
and he thought that he was going to do Viacom, CBS, or whatever it is.
He's going
I
Viacom,
started think-
CBS, Discovery, Tesla. It's just-
Right, but the second I saw Viacom CBS, I'm thinking Sherry Redstone. It's like you never want to do any kind of thing that involves her there's always going to be some shade, and I don't want to say shady, but there's always going to be some annoying crap that happens. If I even, not that I have billions of dollars and not that I can do all this kind of leveraging and just things that he was doing, but I'm saying that even if I was in his position, just the kind of knowledge that you and I have, I would steer away from anything involving Sherry Redstone, just as a rule of thumb. You know what I mean? If I'm being forced, if now you're forcing me to do shady dealings, and it's somehow I saw the Viacom CBS thing, I would steer clear of that.
Oh yeah, I mean, heck, even at the time, at late 2019, which is when this all took place. Even at the time, it's like I was so divided because it was just back with the merger. The merger had just been completed. With Paramount and Viacom CBS kind of coming back into the fold, if memory serves. Or was that the year later? No, I think it was around that time because it was during the pandemic. And everything was kind of going weird. And then there was this potential where, they're like Paramount right now as a studio, they're buying up all these original independent spec scripts and they're putting them into production. They're trying to get them out. And then the next year follows and you're like, oh, okay, we have the pandemic. The pandemic hits, everything's put on delay and hold. Then the year after that, still delay and hold. Trickling out some productions, going through great headaches to meet, health and safety guidelines at incredible margin prices. And then 2022 comes and you're like, oh, they have completely imploded. They got rid of the people that were working on those original films. They're still in their coffers, and now they're in development hell. And everything is just kind of, and then of course, their stocks dropped significantly. So
it's a stock that I wouldn't gamble on, even if the stock market was going up. And I guess what I'm saying is, I think with a minimum, I don't know, even want to say minimum, with the kind of knowledge that you and I have about entertainment, I think that if he saw that he already made that amount of money, the fact that he didn't sell and just get out of it and take his money and just say thank you, and he continued to ride this stupid Viacom thing, I mean, it's so foolish. It's so foolish. But at the same time, I can also understand, I mean, there's a certain euphoria that sometimes people feel, and it's interesting that even a trader like this could feel it. You're making, you had a 1.5 billion, now you have 35 or 100 or whatever it is. It keeps growing and growing and growing. You look at these numbers, they keep growing, and there's a part of you that you don't want this rush, this kind of euphoria rush to end. And you just continue like, no, we can make more money. We can make more money. But at the end, everything that goes up, at the end, there's a moment where it comes down. And in his case, with all of his leveraging and wheeling and dealing with the banks, I mean, it was so risky. Unbelievable that he could even, in real life, unbelievable that he got so much from the banks and how much he was able to pull off. It's just, it's crazy.
Well, it is crazy. The other part, too, is that he's not trading in other people's money because he set up a private trading company. So it's all his money that he's trading in. So he's the one that's basically, he's leveraging his own assets to the banks, buying up stocks, and then selling them at a profit to pay off the debt, and then just, build up his liquidity that way. And the reason he has to do it this way is, number one, there's a lot less oversight. And number two, he was part of a big scandal that happened with a Chinese company like Tiger something.
Right. Yes. Tiger something. You're right.
And basically when he managed to pay like a $44 million fine, walked away with his remaining millions, and he started up the smaller company. And then he turned those, I think it was like what, 20 million. He turned into 1.5 billion bucks, and then he's got his charity, which has $800 million kind of tucked away. And the gimmick that he uses with his charity, in accordance with his employees, is that they have to donate, but the principal is protected, and the investment above the principal is what is part of their profit sharing that they do. But he also has this gimmick where if you keep reinvesting your profit sharing into his charity via the plan, you are better favored at the company with raises and other benefits. And so,
That is such a red flag. I mean, I
yeah,
believe that if it's in the movie, it probably that's what he did, but that is such a red flag. Any place of business, I don't care who this guy is, and especially if you do like a Google search and you learn of his background and what he's done, and then he's like, "No, we'll hold on to it here. Don't worry." That doesn't sound right to me. I wouldn't want to work in a place like that. I think that my senses would tell me immediately that something's not right. I would absolutely want my money immediately. I wouldn't put it in any plan. I'm not giving it to anybody. I'm not. It's not a matter of like, oh, you don't want to donate to charity. I can donate to charity on my own time and dime. I would not let this guy hold on to millions of dollars, based upon his word or whatever it is.
oh,
Even if there
exactly.
was something in writing, I wouldn't accept it. This all seems fishy. Maybe I'm a Monday morning quarterback, but honestly, I think that in a company like this, just that practice alone would be a huge red flag for me. And a lot of these employees, they followed him
Hmm.
blindly and really weren't thinking.
A lot of them were, and then the ones whenever you have these two guys that would keep protesting, but then they'd capitulate because they didn't want they'd been indoctrinated enough in this company that if they did turn their back, they knew they wouldn't have a career anywhere else. And it's crazy, but I do like how Andrew Ferguson, conveys all this information, and he does it with very snappy dialogue. Like I can see why this script was well liked by the Blacklist producers, because like Bill is this fast talking guy who we get this one scene where he's like, "This is my plan." He hears of the coronavirus starting in the news in late November, and how it's happened from the wet market, and he's like, "This is a sign from God," because one of his goals is that he wants to be the richest man in the world, and in order for him to do that, he needs quote unquote everything. So he forges this plan where he's like, "These are the stocks I'm looking at," and he wants to buy them at X amount of dollars. And his whole goal is that he has these leverage deals with all these banks, and he wants to increase them from 4, which is their cap, to 5 to 7 times so that he can make all these buys. And what he ends up doing is he's kind of like doing the old crime back in the 50s and 60s where you would open up a checking account, put in like, 200 bucks, then you'd write yourself a check for 200 bucks, go across the street to another bank, cash that check, right, and then just do that from bank to bank to bank, and then you'd end up walking away with like four or 500 or $600 based off of a $100 deposit, because by the time all the other banks communicate with each other to call in that exchange, then they find out that all the money's gone, and that's why.
Right. He would sort of hide from one bank what he was doing with the other bank, and they were asking him, "Oh, well, like," and he would keep saying, "Oh, if you don't give me what I need, I'm going to call the other bank." But meanwhile, he would actually call the other bank and say, "Well, I'm going to give you the business and not the other people." So he was doing exactly what you said, and the fact that he was able to pull it off, really, I guess all these banks had on their face, and they certainly lost a lot of money. But
Mhm.
it was also an embarrassment that he was able to pull off such a scheme.
Oh, absolutely. And at one point, like the script even says, he ends up becoming uh, a majority shareholder in Viacom CBS, where he owns like 5 times the amount of stocks at least over BlackRock and Vanguard,
Right. Exactly.
which is huge. But you see the way that he wheels and deals, and he also makes these threats. Like he makes threats of like, if you don't give me the market cap that I want, I'll just sell everything, and not just the stocks that he's interested in right now, but everything with that bank, so that they have
Right.
to
A
pay him
liquidate.
out.
He was able to bully them into doing it. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
truth. That even it doesn't matter what it says in the script. The trial showed that. So he was able to do it. I'm always surprised how you think at this level with so many billions on the line with these big banks that somebody could pull such a scheme on them. It always surprises you, and at the same time, it also surprises me that the guy itself that's pulling this crap, like I said, he had moments. Even if he did everything not on the up and up, there were moments that this guy could have walked away with a ton of money.
Yep, he could have walked away with over $35 billion.
Right. 30 over $35 billion. Everybody would have just said how great he is, and from that moment on, he could have, really kind of been more conservative in his approach, maybe less wheeling and dealing, just do something more legit with $35 billion. But no, it's I guess it's the type of character, the type of personality of a person that would chase this kind of money, that would get into one scandal and then do the church thing and do it's that type of personality that also doesn't know when to stop.
Oh yeah, he's this addictive personality and a gambler, and
Right.
it's and the other part
It's
too
the
is he also
gambling, yeah.
values his reputation. Like he gets humiliated at that one dinner because they bring up his past failures and how they kind of see through the fact that even though he's got like 1.5 billion and it's all part of his investment firm, it's not really money he can touch or do anything with, and they're very candid about that to him, to the point where like that's where he gets up to excuse himself and go to the men's room and watch the stock ticker and try and pray to himself, and that's when his wife comes in and prays as well, and you're like they're really kind of, it puts you into a point where you're not 100% sure how much he believes it until you get that one explosion, which we're getting way ahead of ourselves later, but
Right, that
I,
he gets upset, that he says what he really thinks. And I think in that moment, at
mhm.
least based on the screenplay, it sort of shows you when the mask is off what he's really thinking. I think that's what it was meant for.
Me too. And I will say this: our secondary protagonist in this case, because technically Billy's the antagonist, but the protagonist is Molly Goldman. And one of the things we learned is that Bill wants Molly to change her last name because he has blacklisted Goldman Sachs as
Right.
a bank to draw no credit from. He doesn't like them for whatever reason. We don't really fully understand why, but we just know that he doesn't like them. And you think it's a joke when everyone, in Bill's tight circle advises Molly that she should, change her last name because he just doesn't like him. And she's really apprehensive because she thinks it's stupid and it's dumb, and she thinks that this is a dangerous request and also in violation of a lot of personal privacies as well. And the funny part about this is that she's not capitulating. She's actually putting pressure on all the people around her because she knows why she was hired and what she was hired to do. And everyone around her is telling her to do something else, which is basically the CYA, cover your ass, research into all these stocks that Bill is buying up. And then they throw in this, then they close off the transparency of the accounts. And that's where like the story kind of takes an interesting turn, because now Molly, who is doing all this research to make sure that they have enough information to justify this crazy purchase of these stocks that essentially Billy has picked what appears to be at random, and now she can't see, well, how much have they purchased, where did they get the money from, and regarding leverage, and what is the percentage on that leverage as a gain that they have to pay off when they cash out. Like, all that information has been privatized and is secured, and Molly is really worried about that. And I like how she's reaching out to not just the people that work with her and staff, but also like competitors of sorts, saying, hey, listen, I need you to help me figure this out because everything about this is wrong. And this is a very jargon heavy script with regards to finance. So I don't think your average audience member will pick up on what is exactly going on the detail it is, but they can tell that, Bill is buying stuff that's highly volatile, and Molly is predicting that it's going to erupt, and not in the good way.
Basically, he's doing even simpler. I think that even your more layman person would notice that he's doing a bunch of shady stuff, and she realizes the exact shady stuff that he's doing. Even if they don't understand the
Hmm.
you know the game he's playing with all these banks and all this kind of leveraging and things that he does, I think that they'll understand the bottom line that he's doing sneaky things with the banks, and she knows what's up. So I think that that's well, like it's explained well enough in the screenplay that even if you're not a finance expert, I think that it's still clear enough.
Yeah, and the other part too, and I think it comes across quite well, is that you don't really like Bill, and you don't empathize with him. He
No,
is
you never really like him. There isn't a point that you're like rooting for him. You always think he's a jerk, and the more he gets himself into trouble, you're just like, okay, you're not worried and thinking, oh, we hope he makes it out of this. You kind of think, well,
no. This is one of those rare stories where you're fascinated in watching this character that you despise, and you know the comeuppance is just around the corner, and you're wondering how well is he going to how is he going to be able to push this off as long as he can before he has to cash that check.
there was a part of me that, like, I'll tell you what, as much as I didn't like him, just for the sake of the other people and their funds and their money, and that there's a lot of other employees there, and it's not just this jerk. At that point, when the part was like, and I actually even didn't mind in the screenplay when they did the ticker, which
Mm.
usually when some screenplay does some strange thing, I don't like it. But actually, when it was like a red ticker that shows like how the
How
money is
Viacom's
going
falling,
down,
yeah.
I kind of like that. I don't know. I've never seen that in the screenplay, and you know what? For that, I said I did a tip of the hat. I didn't mind it, and the fact that it keeps going down. And there was a point in time where like somehow they scraped a few billion. They did something where like just sell, and he's like, no, like I'm not gonna sell, and like he continues to sit there, and you see the thing going down. At that point, like I said, I was feeling bad at least for the employees, even the guys that didn't want to go along with this and
Hmm.
sort of were put in an impossible situation. I mean, sure, I suppose they could have resigned and quit, but I think that when you're so invested in a job and you're just doing what you're told, sometimes you can get caught up in something like this. So maybe for that, and also don't forget that a lot of other employees gave him money to put in the plan, and it's obvious that he's doing all this shady stuff. So just for the sake of people still having access to their money, in that sense, when there was like a moment that he could still have saved himself from messing up, I or sort of bailed, at least minimize the damage, and that he
Hmm.
didn't take that opportunity. That was already annoying. It made me dislike him even more, I guess.
Oh yeah, because so like the context of the script, and also this is what the history has revealed, because the trial actually just ended like a couple of weeks ago. Not
Right,
even.
recently.
So basically what Huang did is he bought so many stocks, he and inflated Viacom CBS to well over $100 a share. And then the moment that Viacom started selling some of those stocks to refinance parts of their business, he calculated that they couldn't have more than a 10% drop other before other banks would start calling him in to pay off the debt. And so as soon as Viacom starts selling, and he finds this out while he's doing a presentation at his charity, so he's not even like paying
Right.
attention to the numbers. And when he hears about it, he's in a panic, but he's trying to maintain composure. And the two advisors that he's manipulated into doing these sign-offs with all these banks to say, "Oh yeah, we've only bought enough stocks that we can easily offload them within 30 days." But the truth of the matter is that it takes close to 100 days for them to offload them. And even if they did offload them, they wouldn't be offloaded at the current day value, because they'd be able to sell maybe a few thousand here, a few thousand there every so many hours. But every sell that they make, the stock will go down a tiny percentage, to the point where, while they did buy low and they'd be selling it high, they would never be able to roll out the entire portfolio and be completely profitable by the end of it in that 30 days, because if a stock's declining steadily for 30 days, you're almost guaranteed not to be making as much money back as what you retained. And that's the logic that Bill is trying to say, is like, no, if we can buy enough to keep it at this point, then we can start doing the sell. But he has no intention of doing the sell anytime soon. He doesn't even communicate when is the threshold, when is it going to be. he just uses this abstract word, everything, in order to say, like, I'm taking my advice from God. I'm doing what he wants of me to do. And all I can say is, well, the irony is pretty palpable here. It's just, and it just has this huge ripple effect, because during this entire time, like, Molly is just constantly investigating, and she ends up reaching out to her old roommate in university, who is with the SEC. She finds an employee. She finds out that a number of the employees at this company are not Christian, are of other denominations of faith, completely, some Sikh, some Muslim, some Jewish, and you have this attitude that Bill Huang is trying to convert them all to his line of thinking, and they're just going with it for the sake of the job, but they're not abdicating their own faith. And one of them manages to figure out a loophole of sorts, that if you're trading one stock that is not part of this core circle, it ends up giving you access to everything in that core circle, so that you can actually track its rating on the market. And when he figures out how to do that, that's when we see the results of his phone call earlier, when he's been negotiating with all these banks to give him extra leverage at higher rates, or higher margins at their traditional rates, which is really compromising the banks and also himself. And that's where they find out that with his $1.5 billion that he's made up until that point, he's somehow managed to get enough leverage to own $35 billion worth of assets across these stocks. And if any one of them collapses by so many points per stock, which is between like 5 for Discovery, 10% for Viacom CBS, and like 7 and 3 for all these other ones, it would basically cause the entire company to collapse, and everybody would be screwed. And you're like, oh, dang, that is some dangerous trading right there.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of risk taking here, but like I said, I understand that probably the employees around him that did what he told them, they're at fault, and if they got into trouble, they're part of what he did, and you can't ignore that. But at the same time, in many times, in a situation like this, you have an employee that gradually maybe gets suckered into something that he's not 100% sure even. You know what I'm saying? He's working for the boss, and the boss is doing all this stuff. You think, I'm working for a legitimate company, we're doing all this trading, and the boss kind of pushes you, and you start doing things, and you're like, am I bending a rule here? Am I doing more than that here? And that's why, like I said, you don't have empathy for Bill. He seems like a jerk from the first scene you see him, and he just looks like a jerk more and more throughout the movie. But actually, it's the people around him that I think to myself, I kind of feel bad for them. Even this Molly lady, she leaves her job, she comes to this thing thinking this is a great place to work. You have those other two guys. I don't know how many of these people really exist in reality. I know that the two people that worked for him, they really did exist. Meaning, those are people that exist in reality. Molly and the Kareem and whatever his name is, I don't know if they exist, but let's just say that at least they represent. I mean, this is a company that had employees. They represent at least people that were there and did actually maybe put a lot of the money in his fund and that plan thing and whatever. And to think that you work hard and you get all these bonuses and somebody just gambles them away, and you think you're working for a legit company, I can't help but feel something for them at least.
Oh, likewise. I mean, you empathize a lot with Molly, because she's this one who, she has really nothing at stake other than the fact that that if this goes sideways, she'll never be able to work in finance again. And she needs to figure out a way to get ahead of that. But at the same time, she's also like doing her due diligence. She knows that if what she suspects is true, all the regulators and all the authorities are going to come in and shut everything down and basically interrogate everybody to find out who was working with this knowledge in mind and who was completely uninvolved. And I like the fact that she's always at odds with everyone, to the point where, like, once the pandemic hits and everybody's kind of working remotely, and we do flash forward right through it, like we just basically burn right through that period. and jump like 11 months into the future, where they're starting to return to the office, and you've got this kind of like victory lap that Huang is doing because yes, even though he started buying those stocks and then the pandemic hit and the market kind of started to dip, there was that big influx of investment to kind of prevent the market from having a huge crash, and Huang benefited greatly off of that to the point where he felt like he could do no wrong, and it also convinced everyone in the office who had doubts that I guess, yes, he has a divine connection, because all these other companies and banks are struggling during the pandemic, but his fund has, God, multiplied by 300 times almost, or at least 30, minimum of 30 times. Sorry, not 300, 30 times. And everybody's like, okay, I guess we got to follow him through. But what I really liked is how Molly pointed out that the moment they start coming back, the office no longer is recognized by how it was before. It now looks like basically a Russian Secret Service building. Like security cameras, every door has these special automatic locks to it. I mean, there's a little bit of comedy, but it's very, very dry in this script.
Yeah, it's dry, but I can understand why it would be mildly amusing, some of it.
Oh, absolutely. But I like the fact that we skip over the stuff that's not important. We get right into the meat, which is, okay, the first conflict is that Molly has kind of figured out how much the company has been leveraged to achieve this goal, and that if they don't start selling these stocks soon, like right now, they're going to be in trouble. And then at the same time, the two advisors are telling Billy the exact same thing, and he's like, no, we're staying the course. And then that's where we get our mid-act twist. Viacom starts selling. Everybody else starts selling Viacom CBS. And it's basically a race to see if he can get enough money to hold it off. To your point earlier, yes, he does. So like this is where you get the stock ticker where it goes from like 100.5 to 99.6, 97, 98, 90, 96, 95, and it just keeps going, and everybody's panicking except for Billy, who then decides, I'm going to pray right now.
It's so annoying. Yeah, I mean that part. But I wonder to myself if he really thought he was praying or he's just a greedy guy. I don't know. I wonder to myself how he couldn't understand what trouble he was in at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it comes down to it. Is it a delusion of faith, or is it a form of narcissism?
Narcissism.
Or both,
I
right?
think that the faith is, like you said, a veneer. I think that this is complete narcissism, and he thought that somehow, it would pull ahead because he feels good about it. He was on such a rush with the euphoria, with his rise and all the money he was making, that he just he couldn't see a situation where it's not going to work out in his favor. That actually happens. It happens to gamblers. It happens to people in marketplaces. It's not like it's impossible, but still, after all the years of experience that he had, that he wasn't able to learn the lessons of the past, and at least as shady as he was, just get out when he could. It's kind of annoying. But it is what it is.
But it was also, I mean, the way that same scene plays, it is kind of funny, because if you, like, as you said before, because we've been following, this part of the entertainment industry, and we know the outcome of some of these companies, we have the dramatic irony knowing, like, yeah, this is not going to go the way he needs to. But it also comes into...
We're like, no. Like, when he said, like, I'm going to buy like this, I want to buy that, I'm like, what are you doing? And, like, I don't even like him. I'm like, what are you doing? Viacom CBS with, like, Sherry Redstone? Don't buy it. Don't buy it. And he's like, well, buy, like, so much of this. And, like, he just keeps buying more of it. I'm like, what are you doing? Most people won't have that reaction when they read it, but I think you and I probably did.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. My favorite part of the scene was after the fact. So, like, we have this little running gag in the second and third act where this new automatic door keeps locking people into the conference room. And so maintenance guy has to keep coming in to fix it up. And even though they managed to contact one of their banks, I think is like CS. It was one of their CS banks. And they said, yeah, we need this extra, we need a little bit more play and margin. And the guy's like, we can't do it. He's like, well, then I'm going to sell everything that I have associated with you, and then you got to pay out now. And he's like, okay, fine, we'll do it, because he doesn't want to lose the account. And then the stock levels off just for a little bit. And everybody's like, oh my gosh, we're saved, we're good, we're fine. And then it starts dropping $5 and then more and more. And as it's dropping, literal representatives from, I guess, Morgan Chase come in, and they want to talk to him.
Chase.
They want to talk to Bill, and Bill's trapped inside the office, and he's trying to say, like, oh, tell them I meant lunch or something. He's like, they're not going to be able to believe that because they're literally right outside the door. They can see it to the office. They can see you. Not only are they physically there, they're also calling you on their cells to your direct line. So you better talk to them. And they're basically saying, listen, are you liquid enough to pay off your debts? Because we're calling it in now. And he's just like, yeah, sure, of course we are. We're perfectly fine. And they give him the timeline. They say, you got till 3 p.m. this afternoon to pay it off, or we're closing everything out. And basically, it's a do or die moment for him. And every single bank he calls refuses to extend him any more credit. And what ends up happening is we get this beautiful scene where he goes to the one bank he has blacklisted this entire time, Goldman Sachs. And we got this nice scene where these two guys are like, oh, yeah, we see what you're doing here. It's a shame that you've never reached out to us to participate in this investment, because we would have made a lot of money too. We don't understand why. And we never find out exactly why. But in the questioning of because they're doing their due diligence. I mean, it's the other part too is like the level of due diligence that these banks are doing is just on a person's word, which is like so irresponsible. It just
right.
Like,
it's hard to believe that. It's hard to believe that that he got away with it. You think to yourself, and there's actually something where they have I don't know if it's like a news pundit or somebody talking, one of those Jim Cramers or somebody else, and they're basically saying at some point that your average Joe, if they want to get like some Discover card, they have to fill out 70 forms and answer 70 million questions and do like a full-on whatever they said, like
jump through hoops,
or whatever it is. And like sometimes they don't even get it. Whereas this guy waltzes in with his problematic past and his shady dealings and just gets all these people to give him all this money. And I don't know. It's really it does actually give you the feeling that sometimes this system is messed up.
Yeah, there's definitely like two classes there: those that have money and those that are trying to build money. And the ones that are trying to build money are denied, and those that have it get all these easy passes. I mean, the only thing that they have to do is these banks are sending them just this contract saying like, yeah, you're signing to agree that this is the stipulations with regards to the account, and that you're saying that in good faith this is all true. And the other two guys just don't want to sign it. But then Bill kind of blackmails them and saying, yep, you do. You're going to sign this because if you don't, we're in a lot of trouble and we need that money in order to, reach success. So they end up signing it. And then we get that same situation over at Goldman Sachs where the two guys are saying, okay, so all we just need are the two advisors to confirm that, yeah, this is fine and that the assets are good. And then the one guy is like, oh, yeah, they're good. And then the other one says, yeah, no problems. And both of those Goldman Sachs employees are kind of scoffing at the idea and saying, well, that's a real lot of confidence in delivery there. But they decide, yes, we're going to do the contract. We're going to give you what you need. The only stipulation that we require from you, Bill, before we complete the deal is, can you say please? And for some reason, this triggers Bill to the point where he grabs the contract, he just tears it up and storms right out of the office. And I'm laughing and I'm thinking, this is a good character flaw. His ego is so great that he can't just, say one simple thing in order to get him out of trouble, the very trouble he put himself into. And I thought that's kind of fascinating here.
Yeah. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm there. I just wanted to see if you had any more to add on to that.
Oh no, sorry.
No, it's okay.
I thought for a second that you were you roboted out or something, but no.
Oh, did I? Okay, sorry.
No,
Yeah.
I generally agree. I generally agree with what you're saying.
Well, I mean, I just thought it was a pretty good moment there. I mean,
Well,
yeah.
yeah.
Go ahead.
I mean, I wonder if in reality they really had that Goldman Sachs thing, if there was really a situation like that. But at least for dramatic purposes, it was a nice touch in the script.
No, I thought it was great as well because it was like, oh, this is a guy that literally had a horse that was, yeah, he was bit the hand that was feeding him before he even got the food. it just it was all right there, ready to go, and he could have taken the money that borrowed from Goldman Sachs, used it to pay off Morgan Chase, bought him some time, hopefully with the markets dropping up there, and yeah, but he chose not to do it. And then what ends up happening? Well, I mean, this one here, we don't really have a spoiler cutoff, ladies and gentlemen, because you can Google the guy's name and you know everything.
Right, this is based on a true story. A guy was arrested because he did bad things. So really, this is just a biopic about that.
Yeah,
I
and the
think
trial just ended a couple weeks ago. It was all over the news. If you outside of the election stuff that was going on, this was being covered. So
right. So there's no real spoiler here. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It was a nice touch at the end that he had a way to kind of resolve his problems at least temporarily, but like his ego wouldn't let him do it. I don't know if in reality that scene played out that way, but it's certainly nice. What I was thinking to myself is that this is the type of screenplay that I would give, you know, to who? To is his name? I think his name is mentioned in this screenplay. Is that Andrew Ross Sorkin? Isn't that the guy that did Billions?
maybe let me double check here.
They actually mention him as somebody talking to CNN at some point in the screenplay, but that would be the guy. Whoever made Billions, with it, which I think his name was Aaron Ross Sorkin. That's what I think
Yeah,
his name was.
Andrew Ross Sorkin with David Levin and Brian Koppelman.
Right. I would actually, I would take that team and give them this screenplay. It's perfect for them. I mean, they did that was exactly the vibe in Billions. That even if you're not the biggest finance expert, they gave you enough of an understanding of the type of schemes they were running, and at the same time, they knew how to build the atmosphere of the office, the type of atmosphere that you would expect maybe at a place like this. If I had something, it's not real criticism because it's only a 2 hour thing. I think that I would have wanted to see maybe more of the atmosphere in this office. I know
Hmm.
we got a few employees here and a few employees there, but I think that in Billions, they really give you a feeling what it feels like to work at a place like this. And I think that maybe if this was more of a mini series, you could get a little more on that level. But regardless, I think that the people that make Billions, I think they would have known what to do with this screenplay, maybe even been able to polish it a bit and make it even add some little nuances in his office to make it add a little bit to the humor because there was a little bit of humor, but I think that
Hmm.
if you would have brought those guys in, they would have fine-tuned it that it was a little more humorous.
Yeah, because it was real. I mean, some of the humor was depicted in action that I don't think got across as effectively, especially that one character that needed his inhaler all the time. It's like that. It came and went, but it just didn't feel like it stuck the landing, in my opinion.
Yeah, it was fine. I mean, it was very kind of superficial. Again, I have to say that on Billions, they had time to build those characters. Like you watch it, and like you gradually get to know all the people that work there, and you kind of learn. You see, it gives you more time to really get the feel for it. Maybe these guys don't have that time with this type of screenplay, but more could have been done more than just the inhaler.
Yeah. And then what was the next joke? The one guy talking about he's got two kids in private school, one going to Dartmouth, and an ex-wife with way too much alimony that he
Right.
owes her. So like you've got some of the basics of why they're capitulating to Billy's stuff. But on the other side of things, you've got Molly and her little team, and everybody around her is freaking out except for her. And that's when she reveals, like, well, I'm an analyst, and when I saw the forest for the trees, I wasn't going to let that stand. I was going to buy against. She bought insurance. And I think she did that because even after that 1 year where she was just doing research and whatnot, not really doing the trading that she was hired to do, Billy gives her an envelope with like $2 million in it, saying this is her bonus, and he's fully expecting her to reinvest this in the plan. And then she has this big monologue, and there's this script has a lot of monologues, long monologues in them.
Yeah.
And this one here, she just basically, like, through pure exposition, details exactly what this plan is, what Billy isn't trying to do here, and that whether she invests it and sticks around longer or takes it and is probably, fired in the next year or so, is there only two options. She ends up saying, I'm taking it. And it's peppered out that she used that $2 million to basically buy insurance against all of his bad stock buys.
I wonder in reality if there was such a character in this case that was even able to do that, because that in and of itself is a bit slippery, but I
Yeah.
don't know.
Well, I mean, it is to a degree, because you're like wondering, well, is this really insider trading? But it's really just as a result of her investigation into if someone is doing insider trading. And also reading the numbers, which, again, before she finds out all this other information, the hardcore details of all the bad actions that Billy's doing, she already knows, like, this is not right. Something's not right here. And the fact
Right,
that,
she could say it's a hunch at this
well,
point,
she
I
could
guess.
say because her employer is hiding the data with regards to investments, that would suggest that there's something wrong. And so it is to her best interest to not follow those investments and instead buy insurance against them, so that if they do fall, she can at least, she could use that as like her, her golden parachute out of this company.
I
And
mean, that was
yeah,
all right. I also I want to say that in that scene that she starts giving him the whole speech of why she's taking the 2 million. I think in reality somebody would just be like, "Hey, I'll take it, thank you," and you just take the check and go cash it. I think that the more you lecture the guy, the more it's probably not going to be in your favor, in my opinion.
yes, I would agree with that.
Like in a real workplace, I think you just take the, "Oh, thank you so much. I have to go put it in the bank." Like, and you say, "Oh, no, I'm gonna put this one in the bank. Thank you." That's it. I wouldn't go anymore. Like, I wouldn't say, "I know that you're a crook." Like, I don't. Wouldn't start with all of that.
Oh, exactly. It would have been better to be like, "Oh, thanks," and then just walk away. I mean, I've done that a couple times with some bonuses where they're expecting me to, like, do something else with it, and I'm just like, "Oh, thank you," and then just get up and leave.
Right. I mean, I think that in reality it would have played out differently. Again, they need a little bit of drama here, and they took creative liberty. I'm sure that there's creative liberty in this screenplay, but overall, I think that as a foundation for a screenplay that tells this story, I think it's all right. I'm not saying that this is the best screenplay I've ever read, but compared to some of the other screenplays that we've read, even for this show that we're on right now, I think that this one is one of the more focused ones, because it's a story that happened in reality, so there's enough to work with here that it gave them a frame for how to build a narrative within something that really exists, a story that really does exist, and I think that the screenplay seems rather competent, not perfect, but competent. But if somebody greenlit this and brought somebody like those guys that I told you that made billions, or people on that level, and they brought them in and they said, "Hey, we want to make this movie," I'm sure there's a way to polish this script. I mean, every script we see here, it doesn't mean that this is the final draft. Obviously, every script we see, even if somebody options it, can have a person to come in, like a script doctor like yourself, come in and kind of punch it up a bit. Especially the dialogue, add a few more interesting, quirky characters, and make it a little more kind of maybe add a little bit to the satirical
Like
comedy,
Moneyball
or
it, or Wolf of Wall Street it a little, that type of
right,
thing. Yeah.
right, something like that. There's certainly a way to do it, and I think that that this screenplay is enough of a foundation. If I'm running a studio, and I'm thinking, of making a movie of this nature, or considering something, I would maybe take a script like this, add somebody like I told you, like the team that I told you, to punch it up a bit and make it interesting. I'd also limit it. It's not going to be a movie that gets. It's not one of those MCU movies that they pay $500 million for, like Brave New World or whatever it's called. It would be something where, at most, tens of millions of dollars. That's what I would put into it, tops. Uh, the lowest you could do it for, the better.
Yeah. Absolutely.
If
I
you
mean,
could do it for $10 to $20 million, maybe you got something.
oh, this is easy to do that, but I will say, like, this script is 130 pages in length, and it reads alarmingly fast because it's got a lot of dialogue.
I
Like,
mean, you could do it for 10 to 20, but if somebody like Kevin Feige type was in charge of it, it would cost hundreds of millions of dollars, or Ridley Scott, or I don't know what. This needs somebody that's more of go-getter.
Well,
You know what I'm saying?
Scorsese could do this. Scorsese could do
Who?
this for cheap. Martin Scorsese could do this for pretty
I
cheap.
feel like Martin Scorsese, the second he gets involved, it already becomes not cheap. I don't know him to really somehow at the end, I don't know why. At the end, what happens is these big names at this point, they have to have everything the best. The kind of talent he wants and all this stuff that he wants. I think this is like something above an indie. More than an indie that you would pay like a few $1 million for, but
Hmm.
I wouldn't go above 20. I think that like $20 million is the maximum budget to put into this thing. And even then, I hope that I already have like in advance some deal with a streamer or something. Not that I'm saying that
Yeah.
it'll debut on a streamer, but already thinking about the rights to some kind of streaming service because this could probably even do better on a streamer, like as a Netflix release or something than in a theater. Because I don't know that everybody's going to be running to the theater to watch this.
No, this would be like a limited theater release with like, a streaming platform. I will say, like, even if you were to get Scorsese on this, you would still have a limited budget because there aren't many. I mean, again, Billy Huang is an Asian man in his late 50s. There are not many actors in that demographic that command a massive payday like a George Clooney or Leonardo DiCaprio or Matt Damon or other actors that have worked with Martin Scorsese. So the cast alone would be very affordable, just based on the types of actors you would need to do this. Like who would you like? You have a girl like Molly Goldman, who you would need someone like in their late 20s, early 30s. There's not many female actors in that age range that demand $20 million for a movie. So like there's a lot of room there, budget wise to play around with this, and I think that's how you can make this relatively affordable, especially if you want to get a good director, or if you just want to get someone who's on the rise who wants to do something like this. Because this, I mean, in my opinion, I think this would be a good movie that Sony would invest in because it's low risk. They have the distribution network and they also have the contract with Netflix to make sure on the secondary window that they would make up any shortfall from the box office. And it definitely fits into that world of like, Moneyball and Wolf of Wall Street and Wall Street itself. Like it's definitely those types of films where it's all about the deal, the money, and these people that are very good at what they do, playing with fire essentially.
I agree.
So
but again, I still think that somebody like Scorsese, like at the end, you just attach a name like that and just he's like, oh, maybe Joe Pesci will play like this doorman. I don't know what. I feel like you just start with him and it just can't end cheaply. I think that you need somebody. I would give you this name of a director, which initially when I saw him, I was impressed with how well he did with so little. But then immediately Hollywood kind of took over and I think steered him in a bad direction. Do you remember that director Damien Chazelle?
oh, that sounds familiar.
He made the movie Whiplash, and he made it
Yeah.
for a few $1 million, and he was a young director, kind of on the rise. And I really like what he did with Whiplash. I thought that Whiplash was a really, not only did I enjoy the movie, period, the fact that he made it just for a few $1 million is just amazing. I think he made it for like 1.5 million or something. Maybe
Well,
I'm wrong.
it was Blumhouse. Yeah, they don't spend a lot of money, but yes, keep
Right,
going.
but it wasn't a Blumhouse where there's like some like weird ghost in the closet, like
It wasn't the
lurking.
horror part. It was their art film. Yeah.
Right, it was actually like a legitimate art movie, and I thought that the guy did a good job. So then Hollywood took notice, and like they said, "Hey, why don't you do La La Land?" And like, yeah, I know they gave them awards, and I know everybody kissed La La Land's ass, but the only reason they kissed its ass is mainly because it was kissing their ass. And I didn't. I thought the movie was all right, but all the hype and praise surrounding that movie, I don't think it deserved it.
Hmm.
I think that the guy had much more to offer than La La Land. Next, they gave him that First Man movie where when Neil Armstrong was going to the moon,
Right.
and I feel like since then I don't even remember what movie he even did since then. Maybe he did something big and I don't remember, but I feel like from this promising talent that did like seemingly the impossible with this small budget. He ended up going, in my opinion, not in a good direction. But somebody like that, if he was passionate about a script like this, I think that, maybe he could bring something out of it if he's done doing that kind of Hollywood
Well,
reach
his
around.
last big film was Babylon, which was the
A flop.
that flop, that Hollywood one,
Right,
which
because and that's the problem. That this guy, you know what the problem with this guy is? If you watch Whiplash, you could tell he has potential, at least in my opinion.
sure.
Then he does La La Land, Babylon, all these like, let's kiss Hollywood's ass, let's kiss Hollywood's ass. No, like, don't kiss Hollywood's ass. Make just a smaller movie. Do what you did that made you stand out. Why are you making these kiss ass movies? And even that La La Land with the Oscar didn't help him. You'd think that, make him a big name, but no, I think he did that. They all appreciated the flattering and didn't get him anywhere. Maybe he thought with Babylon he was redoing that kind of Hollywood gesture.
Perhaps. I mean, yeah, I will say this though, like the script itself, because it covers only a couple of real significant beats, and despite the fact that it's 130 pages in length, it is still very thin. So this is a very much dependent on like having a really strong cast and a director. And to your point, the Damien, he may be the type of guy that could do something with this.
He did something with Whiplash. He did exactly that. They got J.K. Simmons that did it for very cheap because he really liked the idea.
Yeah.
And all the other people, Miles Teller, I think nobody knew who he was then. It was basically a cast of people that know. Paul Reiser had like a very small thing, but I guess all these people took really small salaries to be in this kind of small indie. I don't think anybody expected much from this indie at all, and it ended up being like a big movie. And I think the guy proved that if you give him a good screenplay, which maybe he even wrote it, I don't even know. I'm not gonna say that because I'm not sure, but like maybe he even wrote it, and he brought worked with this cast. He did a really good job with them, and it was like a small movie that felt big. I would give. I still feel like that director has something in his arsenal that he could do. It's just that he needs to go in another direction. He needs to stop these big Hollywood, flattering things.
And you would say that this script would be a good thing for him to kind of venture into that could probably achieve that, right?
I think so. I
Yeah.
think so. Even if it's like something more low stakes, like he does it for a streamer or something like that, I think he could totally do this. He'll probably find like somebody that could, play this role, even if it's like in the past, like he worked with people that were sort of no names, a few of them, and he still was able to do it. I think that he's the type of guy. If his mind is still in that mindset, if it now like the success went to his head and he thinks like, oh, like I only do movies now that are Hollywood and whatever, then maybe not. But if he's been humbled a bit, I would give him a movie like this. Just my opinion. Versus Scorsese, because Scorsese, I feel like you can't at this point, when he's 80 something years old, tell him, listen, we're going real small here, Marty. We're going to go here like 10 to 15 million. Can you make this work for 10 to 15 million? The answer is no. Just like the crane that he wants for the tracking shot will cost like $10 million.
Well, if he decides to build his own crane unit, maybe, yeah.
You know what I'm trying to
Yeah, I
say.
do
By
know
the
what you're
time
trying
he's
to
done
say.
with his whatever it is that he's doing, it's not gonna cut. It's gonna cut. They'll be like Martin Scorsese's new $100 million production. It's like I can't imagine that it goes less. Like it's gonna balloon.
Perhaps, maybe. So, okay. Well, before we call it, is there any other parts of the script you wanted to address before we give our votes at the end?
Only that at the end with the titles that appear at the end of the movie, it would be have to update the titles because
Mm.
of the new developments. But that's a minor
Yeah,
detail.
that's right. Because Bill Huang, I think, got 16 years
Yeah,
sentence,
I think
and
so.
right now his lawyers have made an appeal to basically do it as 6 years house arrest, which I think a judge is considering.
I'm really surprised that he's considering it,
Me too.
considering how much money we're talking about here and what this guy has done. That he would sit 6 years at home. That's like,
Well, he lost 35 billion, and that had a repercussion of around like 195 billion throughout the markets or something of that nature. Like that's what they're claiming. And then on top of that, he still has his charity, which has $800 million of money protected, but it's a private charity, which means he and I don't think it's properly registered in the same way, but like just enough to basically protect it from taxes. There's nothing to say that he can't expense some of those charity funds to keep his standard of living up, because sadly, it is alleged that a lot of charities do that. For some of the
Oh,
people
I'm
that own
sure.
them.
And I have a feeling that he thought of all of this when he opened that charity. This seems like a guy that thought of a lot of slippery maneuvers.
Oh yeah, like you can exploit every loophole you can if you own a charity and a private hedge fund. It's like, oh yeah, we're just gonna all of our
We
profits will
should
just
open
move
a
in.
charity.
We should open a charity.
The Script and Price Charitable Foundation.
Yeah, the script of reason. Yeah. Okay. So, okay. I mean, I will say this. I will recommend reading this script because it really knows how to have some punchy dialogue to it.
Right. It's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I will say this. There is definitely a skill, to make a 130-page script read like it's a 90-page script. Like again, I when I read this originally on Monday, I kind of blasted through this in just under an hour. I was reading it while I was on set earlier today as well, and again, covered it with a couple of breaks, because I had to go and do some work. I was still able to finish reading it in under 2 hours, and that's not easy to do for most writers when they're crossing that 120-page threshold, so to speak. So that I would strongly advise people to check it out if they can. So Price, based on this script, would you give this a green light or a pass?
I would give it a green light. I would tell the producers to punch it up a bit, but I think that it's a good foundation for a movie. Like I said, when I say a movie, I mean, I'm also thinking of the budget, something like 10 to 20 million. 20 million would already have to mean that there's a star that somebody knows who's in this movie. If it's a smaller movie, I think like 10 to 15 million. This has to be, more of a low-key thing and with a deal with some streamer. But there's potential to make a movie here. And not every movie has to be like Captain America 7 or whatever that is,
Right.
with a $500 million budget. Not every movie has to be that. Sometimes it's nice to do a movie that's more of a real life story, and you put like 10 to 15 million into it. It's totally doable with the right team and the right people involved. And I think a studio, based on some of the other screenplays we've looked at, if this is an option, this is one of the better ones I've seen until now, based on the ones that we've discussed.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think this is a script I'd totally green light, and I would probably reach out to the writer and say, hey, Andrew Ferguson, go check out Damien Chazelle, see if maybe he wants to attach himself to this for a low budget execution of your script.
The funniest thing would be is if they like run into this into your podcast, listen to it, and like we find out later, like a year from now, we sit there and we see like Damien Chazelle and whoever wrote the screenplay, Ferguson, like in some press photo. That'll make me laugh.
That would make me laugh. Like I'm not gonna hold my breath on it, but I think it'd be kind of funny. That would be great if
That would be
happened.
funny. No, who knows? I mean, listen.
Yeah.
There's other directors out there. I was just trying to think of somebody that I've seen that took like an idea that was small but made it bigger. That's the type of director today in general that I would look for. Unless you're looking at some CGI heavy big, but even then, I would defer to somebody like Takashi Yamazaki on how to make a movie that you do for $15 million and still looks great.
Yes.
I really, if there's one lesson that I think these studios need to learn, it's to stop with all of these 300, $400 million movies. It's not sustainable. It's not profitable. There are ways to make movies that are still great, and you don't necessarily need to put so much money into them. I mean, sure, I guess some movies you still need to put like 50, 100 million into them today. But once you're going to like $400 million, $500 million, I think that you're doing something wrong. I don't think that there's a movie that can justify that kind of money.
Especially this type of script, personally.
Well, no, for this for sure.
Yeah.
For this type of, but I'm even saying even on a more global scale. I don't care what genre it is. Like when I see something like, oh, they spent 500 million on it. Well, then you messed up. If you spent $500 million on a movie, I don't care what movie it is, you must be doing something wrong.
Oh yeah, that's an abuse of accounting and everything. 100%.
And
Oh,
imagine
right.
all the movies, all the smaller movies, like the one like this screenplay,
Hmm.
and but even other ones that are more escapist or whatever, more like science fiction-y or whatever you want to call it. You can make so many good movies. If you take 500 million, I'm sure you can make several decent movies
At
for
least
500.
20 under around 10 million or so, or at least 25, 20. So yeah, like you can make a lot of $10 million movies for $500 million.
I'd
Um,
rather that. I want to see more creativity in this industry. I understand that, this is a movie more for adults, and sometimes you want to make these big tentpole blockbusters. I understand that. But I really like the days that we got more of a variety of different types of movies, studios taking more risks, but at the
mhm.
same time, even when they took risks, they didn't spend $500 million on them. There's too many IPs, too many of these kind of rehashes and reboots. I like original stuff. I really wish that there would be kind of a shift in Hollywood where they'd start embracing a little more originality again. But
I mean,
we'll
with
have
some
to
of the other
see.
studios, that is. But one thing I could say is like you can definitely draw a parallel to the actions that Billy Huang was doing in this script to what Disney has been doing with their IP.
You know what? That is true. That he's a good. He's
He's a good avatar for that.
right. He's a good exactly. He's a good avatar for all the overspending in Hollywood. Maybe that's why nobody's greenlighting this script. Not to mention, one of the reason I think they don't want to greenlight it. This is just my personal opinion. Once he's dealing with Viacom CBS, and it's sort of putting on the rocks some other studio. Maybe some people don't want to get involved in this. I know that's weird, but I thought
Mhm.
that maybe some studios look at this and they're like, we don't want a movie that shows that whoever bought Viacom CBS was an idiot or Discovery.
I will say this: you are technically limiting the studios that could play with this
Yeah, I mean,
as a
I
film.
don't see David Zaslav sitting there and saying it's so great. So he bought Discovery and lost everything. Like let's make this movie. Totally don't see that. I think that David Zaslav sees this, throws you give him this thing, he throws it out the window if you give him like a printed screenplay.
Yeah.
Same with Paramount. So those two aren't doing it. And
So that leaves Sony, Disney, and Universal, which is still 3 out of 2, 3 out of 5. Not bad. Decent
that's
options.
true. Or Netflix could do some kind of deal for a streamer thing.
Netflix could do something. MGM, Apple Plus does. Apple Plus, oddly enough, even though they don't do well marketing their films, they do experiment with other genres of film and stuff. The problem is that nobody realizes it's there, even if you have an Apple Plus account.
I see.
Oh
I
yeah,
have
it's
an Apple
tragic.
Plus account, and I never even do almost anything with it. I should
Exactly.
probably watch more. I don't know why Apple Plus is so not fun. It feels like they don't have a lot of stuff there, or they don't. There's something about Apple Plus has never really. I can't
I
even
know.
explain it. I mean, sometimes they have decent things, and I have it, and I barely even look at it.
No, you're preaching to the choir with me on that one. There, like I have to go out of my way to try and find what they're releasing because they don't make it very easy.
No, they don't do a lot of a lot of advertisement or press or anything. It's like you don't even know what it is that they're doing, and they're actually spending real money on it.
I
I
know.
dare say that if Steve Jobs was alive, he would have thought of somewhere else, somewhere.
Some way to advertise
Right,
better.
another
Like,
way to advertise this that they're not thinking of. Because with all of Steve Jobs' faults, he was a good marketing man, and I feel like this Apple Plus thing has never been marketed well.
no, it hasn't because we should be getting the equivalent of like the first Apple iPod commercials for every single one of these movies. Those silhouette ones where it's just the iPod in white around the silhouette of the dancer on the colored background. Like those hit huge, and they were shown all the time, and people got curious of them. Like if you don't have that marketing angle, that inventiveness to complement the movie that you're putting on your platform, what's the point of even investing in the movie? Like I mean, you're absolutely right. There's no guiding vision going on there to get the word out that hey, yeah, if you want this movie or you want that movie, you can find it here on Apple Plus.
Right. I mean, they just don't do enough. But well, maybe one day they'll figure it out.
Maybe one day, but for now, um, I mean that's all we can really say about this script. As long as it was, as always, feel free to check it out. You can Google it and probably find it. If you're having trouble, of course, just reach out to me on the Twitter X's. at Script Doctor PhD. You can also reach out to me and support the show by joining our Patreon at patreon.com/scriptdoctor, where the first week is free at the base tier, which gives you all the back catalog of my notes, my lessons, my reviews, and also gives you details of the upcoming Scripts on Saturday shows and what we'll be reviewing as well. I'm going to see what is in store in the future next year to see how I can expand more fun options on the Patreon for all of those supporters and all the new supporters that be coming in. As always, I want to thank Price for hanging out with me tonight. Go check out his channel at youtube.com/priceofreason. Links are in the chat and also in the description. And I want to thank our mods, Darren M, for doing that, as well as other people listening for this tonight. Excuse me. With that being said, again, next week it won't be a live show. It's a recorded show, but it'll still be here at 7 p.m. So please swing on by if you're available, or if you're just kind of recovering from the food coma that is from Thanksgiving Day long weekend. You'll be able to get some great conversation of next week's script. And for that, I want to wish you all a wonderful weekend, a happy Thanksgiving, and never forget, guys, when it comes to great story, it all starts with the script.